Welcome to the Influential Leaders podcast, where we meet and hear from everyday leaders who are making huge changes in their industry, organisations, and impacting the world. Today, I am joined by Anuraj Gambhir, who is the founder and chief dreamer. He is an internationally recognised strategic business and startup advisor, technology visionary, exponential thought leader, and multi-award-winning innovator with over 30 years of global experience across 5 continents. Welcome, Anuraj. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's a great pleasure.
It is a great pleasure. We've been trying to get this happening for, it must be a year almost now, like a long time. We first met together on stage for education at Captech last year.
Correct. That's right. Yeah, that was really fun. I think it was great.
That was such an awesome event. I love that. For me, I love talking business, and there's like over hundreds of people in a room all with the same agenda, so it worked really well for me. Lots of fun. Lots of fun. And what about yourself? What's been happening for you, Anuraj? What's new on your plate?
Well, yeah, there's been a lot happening. I suppose we've been, maturing our Wise Mirror community and our thinking, our overall propositions over there quite a bit.
Yeah, look, I love the concept of Wise Mirror. So it really is more of a movement, would you say? Is that what you're trying to develop there?
That's right. I mean, it's a philosophy, it's a mindset, and it's a movement. So it's really about where conscious leaders, sort of integrate or intersect with timeless wisdom. I called it ancient wisdom, but now I prefer to call it timeless wisdom after an interesting discussion I had with someone last week on another podcast.
Oh, fantastic. That made you change your mind.
Yeah, with actually a spiritual guru. So he actually upgraded us from ancient to timeless because there's so much there. It's all within us, and that's where it's really trying to find that happiness quotient and sort of building on that and saying it's difficult to find happiness within ourselves, but it's impossible to find it anywhere else. So it's kind of that journey that we have within us. And of course, how that impacts us from the outside. And that's
the movement's about creating, the abundance is there, that you don't need to go outside what you're good at, using your talents to grow almost like your income and your survival. Is that kind of the concept? Explain a little bit more about how do people consciously go into this and become what you're trying to achieve?
Sure. Okay. Maybe first I'll describe a little bit of and the background of White Mirror and moving on to Wise Mirror. Yes. So, White Mirror was the original sort of name that we had a holding part for. And it was really an article that I'd written a few years ago on LinkedIn that sort of went viral, but it was very much around triggered by Black Mirror, which is a series on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen that, which is very powerful. It's got a lot of great, indications and applications of technology, but unfortunately, it's very dystopian. It's really like a Terminator plus. So I think we people can appreciate it, or the people who geeks and techies and so forth. But for the layman, it's scaring them. It's really providing a very negative impact of what technology, because technology per se is neutral. It's how we apply it and what we do with it, right? So it was really about that awakening and how do we bring that positive psychology deeply embedded and sort of flip that model from that Black Mirror to the White Mirror. So we really had what we done originally was we created a comic book with the Museum of the Future with very positive applications of technology on exponential technologies. So a lot of it was triggered by my integration deep work with Singularity University, which I've been very fortunate to be involved with as global faculty, as mentor, as part of the board and so forth. And a lot of the work there we are doing is on exponential technologies for the greater good of humanity. So we've got things like IoT, AR, VR, mixed reality, blockchain, AI in so many of its manifestations, and so forth. And
and what's the next level of that, I guess? So they're the applications and the base technology. Yeah. But, tell us a little bit about the comment. What's the vision of how these are going to help humanity and be a part of our lives?
Sure.
In a positive way.
That's right. Yeah. So basically with White Mirror, we flipped it into a Wise Mirror concept, which is where we talk about the community sharing a common passion, the curiosity, the imagination, and the ability to co-create a desirable future that we so desire to live in. And that's really where we apply these exponential technologies for the greater good. And we've aligned ourselves with the United Nations SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, as part of those global grand challenges. So saying, how do we really bring in those 17 SDGs In fact, we're working on the 18th one right now, which I can describe a little bit later.
Yes, please. Yeah.
And that's really very much about how do we take leadership to a new level. So I think it's very relevant in our discussion here. But it's how do we bring that conscious leadership and how do we bring abundant mindset? So really, it was about how do we flip from that me to we, from scarcity to abundance, from the darkness to light, from incremental to exponential, from that dystopia to utopia, and really from a watcher to participant, and from that impossible to possible sort of approach.
So how does someone get involved with Wise Mirror? Is it just a community, or is it more to it than that?
Well, we actually have regular Zoom calls. We have a lot of collaborative groups and projects that we've been working on. It's been a little bit ad hoc at times, because it's all voluntary and everybody's just, what we do have a global audience, and we do events. We've done like a Wise Mirror, sessions with Singularity U chapters. We did a big event on August last year or September last year during World Peace Day. So from peace one day to peace every day, we called it. And we really got into a lot of how music as therapy and spiritual sort of mindset elevation sort of comes together, and everything that we were talking. So it's a lot around science fiction, technology, spirituality, all intersecting at a level.
So, but you're attracting obviously people that already believe this and understand it. What about people that aren't there yet? We come across them all the time. I'd love to create a movement of leadership within businesses, because I believe that if we had leadership and we understood ourselves and we communicated from the leadership principles, then a lot of the challenges that we have around bullying and people misunderstanding and the angst that people go home with, would change, which means their life would change.
Yes. No, totally. And I think you're right. It's how do we democratize this movement to that regard for the masses? And that's what we're trying to do through our manifestations of multimedia, transmedia. And we've got this, we've done this comic book. We did a virtual reality fly through a world, like an avatar type world.
Yeah, I love that. I saw that on the website. That looks pretty cool. And it reminded me a lot of the metaverse.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's a glimpse of the metaverse. So we've been tinkering a lot of those things. We saw it coming for a long time, well over a couple of decades even. And now so much is converging. Such an exciting time for technology.
Do you know how many people have read the comic book? Do you have stats on that?
No, we don't. But it's. I think we haven't really publicized. We haven't gone and done active social media or anything like that.
I feel like you should do like a Kickstarter with it.
I know. Yeah, well, I think once we get a little bit more organized around things, because this has been a little bit more of a side thing. I've got so many other things that have been going on actively in my, career and work. But
like, is this the base? So like when I read it, to me, it sounded like, if you start with this principle, then everything else that you're doing, growing, trying to be kind of falls into it. If you use this, if someone agrees with the philosophy, obviously.
No, exactly. And that's what, it's about. How do we get to that growth, exponential and quantum mindset level? And really build that, we call the Wise Mirror mindset in that form,
Look, and I guess that people are coming on board for it, because I see it so much in the media and especially through social medias, people talking about passion, working your passion, and there's still that old school thinking where you just got to do what you got to do, and that's it. Whereas there really is, especially with the new generations coming through the workforce, they want to make an impact, they want to have passion, they have all these ideals around things that are really important to the world that maybe past generations didn't really consider as important as much as these new students.
Totally. In fact, what we call it in Singularity U is the MTP, or the massively transforming purpose. So I think it's when your passion and purpose collide. And that's why what I really see in a lot of startups that I work with, it's really about the people, the passion, the purpose, all coming together to create the most compelling product, right? At the end of the solution. So it's how do we integrate that and harmonize it? Because your ikigai,
which is how does someone survive with that? So I guess you do see startups that are so passionate, and that's why something is born. But then often it gets to a point where they no longer can be a part of it because it's not profitable. So do you feel like those ones are just going down the wrong track, or should it have been involved another way, or is that just the way things end up because of the way everyone else thinks?
No, I think it's about being constantly on your toes, I would say, and see what is the product market fit really, because that's one of the biggest reasons why startups fail, and they need to pivot quickly, they need to adapt, because a startup is really a temporary organization, right? I mean, it's
Yes.
really on the journey to find the right business model to thrive in the long run. And so I
I
think
love
what
that.
people need to do is constantly sort of at that early stage is look at how do we adapt very rapidly. It's all about that quotient of rapid adaptability, being relevant for the
Yeah.
market, and saying
Okay.
what do we bring in which is most needed? What are those latent needs? How do we
Yeah.
integrate all those things
And so
and
what about
provide the most delightful user experience for the end user? Because that's
I
where
love
a lot
that.
of them
Yeah.
they stumble in some little part or the other. Is it the market? Because they've done all their work on theory. You see a lovely pitch. You see the TAM, SAM, SOMs, and the lovely financials and predictions and so forth. But at the end of the day, it's the end user, it's the customer
It is
who's the
about the
king, right?
customer.
So it's how do
Yeah.
they, how do you win their hearts with the true biggest
Absolutely. And
delight?
what about existing businesses? If they haven't started with this philosophy,
Hmm.
I see that it can be really and needs to be brought in some way. And
Hmm.
often we call it culture within a
Yeah,
business because people want to work for purpose. If you
right.
want to retain staff, attract staff, then you have to think about, what else is out there for them rather than a job or income. And
Totally.
how does a big business then take the learnings of this and implement that into their
Yeah, sure. So I think big businesses obviously have the resources generally, but
Hmm.
they're generally a little bit slower than the startups, and of course, and that's where you have to try and figure out how do you make the best of all worlds and
Yeah,
integrate, and that speed to market, being
yeah.
rapid, doing rapid experimentation, being able to
Mm.
integrate the right
So
thought
when you say
leadership.
slower, you're talking about the bureaucracies and the processes that they've already got, and
Exactly,
obviously that makes it
exactly.
harder for them to move
Yeah.
fast.
Totally. See, a lot of my career, my corporate career, I was heading innovation for many large corporates. So it was working as a startup within that large corporate. For example, at
I
Siemens, when I
like
was
that.
chief innovation officer there, it was really about integrating and reducing a lot of those silos. How do we bridge those gaps? How do we build that matrix
Mm.
organization? Really build that culture from the coalface to bring innovation not just as a discipline, but a true mindset. And
Yeah.
working with HR on the true philosophy of how do we make that mindset even into a heart set? And that's kind of something I've been toying with through my career and saying at the end
Mm.
it really comes from following your heart more deeply.
Yeah.
uh,
And
you
I,
know
and I guess businesses are having chief innovation officers now. It's more common than it was even 5 years ago, I would say.
totally, yeah. No, I think that's where I learned a lot about setting the right frameworks, the discipline, but really elevating beyond that into that heart set, as I said, from
Yeah.
mindset to heart set, and
And
saying
so if the organization has shareholders, what is the return on investment, would you say, on having an innovation department?
well, I think it's they can clearly set some targets of saying what sort of levels of innovation can you provide. So we used to do a lot of benchmarking and seeing, okay, what other companies are doing. For example, like BMW or BMW in Germany, that was one of our close cooperative sort of innovation frameworks that we would see, and they would have a breakthrough innovation or an incremental innovation. So
Okay.
these many of these per year, and being able to monitor them and working closely with the board and saying, how do we monitor the right innovation? What is the feedback? And how do we constantly sort of bring that culture so that we can monitor and have the KPIs in place
Mm.
and reward innovation rightly within the organization?
And
So,
and innovation's not just necessarily innovating a product. Explain all the different aspects of innovation in an organization.
sure. So innovation can be a service. It can be any right from an ideation phase, from the very early stage of, and innovation is really about an invention plus commercializing it. So it's
Yeah.
not just about an idea, it's about an actionable, insightful idea that you take to the market that can actually bring a share to wallet and impact, obviously financially but economically for the organization. So it's you have incremental innovations, and then you've got the more disruptive or revolutionary innovations, and or radical innovations. And I think that's where you need to sort of see what are the processes, because they're different.
Yeah.
Incremental is something which the organization is already doing to a certain extent,
Yeah.
as in terms of operational improvement and excellence, and sort of working on new ideas to bring to the market. But disruptive or radical innovation really requires a lot of stage left thinking, getting out of that
Mm.
box, and defining what box you think out of, or having a strategy where you really look at innovation as a precursor to the strategy.
Yeah, I like that. And how does an organization create the environment for that? Because obviously that's not going to happen if people are under the pump, if they're stressed, if they're
Totally.
disengaged. So all of that needs to come from the other angle to be able to get innovation out of your team.
Totally, totally. And I think you're right. That's where the culture comes in so deeply, and saying, what is that? What can you do within an organization? And if you look at Google, for example, having that 20% me time or your own
Mm.
time to create things, the one in the 5 days that
Well,
you
that's
can.
how I think the sticky notes were produced from 3M. They allow
Right.
15% of the people's work time to become innovation time,
Yeah,
and that's how they get new innovations out of the products that they already have or the
totally.
technology that they already have
I think
access
it's
to.
when people are most relaxed in the most
Mm.
relevant environment, or I mean, in a very comfortable environment. And I can tell you of the great ideas, many of them that I've worked on have come either over a coffee or over a beer or something, or
Oh,
in nature
okay. Well,
actually.
that's a
So
good start for organizations. You have to have beer time now.
well, yeah, I mean, and that's why Google, for with its whole environment, if you look at their office and
Yeah.
what they've set up in their office is wellness zones, it's creative zones for people to come together. The cafeteria is itself a great mingling point. So
Mm.
it's all
Oh,
about
look, and I know for
collaboration.
myself, if I'm sitting at my computer all day, there's no innovation coming out. I'm more likely to get new ideas or things to do when I've,
Hmm.
gone out for a drive or done some exercise or just,
Totally.
away from the desk.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about in the shower, we had this great,
Oh,
spark
yeah,
of
the
a
shower.
moment,
I've
right?
heard of that.
The Eureka moments. And
I
I
think
think
there's
in
like
nature,
a
so
notepad you can have in the shower these days because
yeah.
most people have their ideas.
Well, we actually formalized this in Germany. So we used to go and have exotic, workshops and exotic environmental places like in beautiful lakes and resorts. And over the weekend, so Siemens had our own resort actually. So we had at Tegernsee, a beautiful lake by nearby Munich, and we would actually go there and ideate and have a full workshop with in a very nice setting, and structuring it with the right activities, physical activities, the right sort of mental striking activities, and really think stage left. That's where a lot of those disruptive
Mhm.
ideas would come. And also, it's very much about the team. How wide and diverse is your team? The transdisciplinarity, as I call it. So it's about multiple disciplines across many industries. So, for
Mm.
example, I had in my innovation team, I had an anthropologist, I had a sociologist, I had an ethnographer. Besides, of course, having your technologist and your geek and your software designer and UX person and so forth. But we
Yeah.
really had to have all these other facets which were very stage left, and looking at how do we really go deep down into an idea, and how do we get that diversity from those cross-disciplinary teams.
It's so true. It's so true. And, I was just speaking to someone this morning. We're online, we're doing a women's event coming up. We've got such wonderful women coming up on stage. And
Yeah,
one of the things that we talked about was the diversity of our networks and, bringing them together. There might be some idea explosion coming out of it just because we're just so diverse. We've got, a surgeon, someone from tech, someone from aged care. So, and
mm,
then myself from leadership. So we really wanted to make sure that we had some people connecting and talking, because
yeah,
in my experience, when we do our leadership programs and we have a diverse amount of industries in there, we're more likely to come up with solve new problems, or solve all problems with new ideas.
totally, totally. No,
Yeah.
no, and I think you're right. It's exactly that gender diversity, the geographical, and obviously the cultural diversity, people's ethnic backgrounds, and so forth. You need to bring everything in and mix that in such a way so that you get the widest sort of range of ideas
Mm.
and
So,
people colliding.
obviously you've gone on to the retreats and mixed it that way. Is that the only way to do it? How else can you mix your different diversities and generations and get an outcome from that?
Well, I think a lot of organizations obviously realizing, obviously with women empowerment, as you said, and all the, bringing people out from, and you can do it, of course, within the organization with the diversity you have, and having structured innovation workshops within the different teams, but then also giving them that informal setting, being able to give them that comfortable sort of environment within. So yeah, I think there's a range of ways to do it. You don't have to go out and totally into a retreat or a resort or something to do it. You can create that environment within your that zone,
Oh,
is
I
what I
totally
call it.
believe that. You don't have, like, it's nice to go out,
Yeah,
and I think it's a great team builder, and it's great to get
yeah,
those new ways of thinking, but I don't think it's the only way to do it. There's
Yeah,
definitely
I think
ways
it's how
of
do you
doing it.
create that environment. And so, for example, I'll tell you what we did, and this was an experiment about 15 years ago in India with a Neurotech headset, which I'm holding right here.
Oh
It's
yeah, yeah.
Mindwave Mobile from Neurosky, and the company that I've worked very closely with in Silicon Valley. And what they've got is an EEG sensor on this, which I put on my forehead. And
Oh, can you put it on or no?
yeah, no, I can show you another one which which I'll put on, which is a Focus Calm
Oh,
headset. Which,
that's cool.
yeah, so I'll
And so
talk
it's an
about these in a
EEG
minute.
reader, and what
It's
else?
an EEG reader, so it reads your brain waves. So you're able to see how relaxed is somebody, how focused are they with these sort of parameters that we're looking from the electroencephalography sort of parameters here. And with that, we were able to see when can we look at the right alpha priming for people to be in the more creative phase to get them into that zone so that they can be more creative with the innovation workshops that we would hold. So we actually did a lot of experimentation with things like these early on to create something called iZone, which was a creative innovation lab in India.
And is it being used today? What's happening with
And
it
yeah,
now?
it's being used in different forms, and I think there's a lot more you can do beyond that. I mean, there are so many
I've got
wearables.
like 50 ideas going through my head right now about how I could use it.
Yeah, and I've got like 50 devices here which can help you with those, monitoring yourself and measuring yourself and so forth.
Yeah.
So, for example, I'm wearing the ring, right? The Aura ring. This is generation 3 of that, and it's got
Right.
7 different sensors. It's 4 grams. It got a week battery life. It's one of the most sophisticated and high-tech wearables out there in the market, and it gives me a readiness score, gives me my sleep score with a lot of detailed parameters of my
Wow.
heart rate variability, which is a measure of your physiological stress.
Mhm.
So I'm able to look at body temperature, integrating a lot of parameters, oxygen saturation and other sort of things to bring together what is my general makeup of myself.
Wow.
at
And
home.
what's the intention of this? Like, are you going to just live a really long time because you're wearing that?
Well, no, I think it just helps you. It nudges you to help you become a lot more active when you need to be. And that can be physically, mentally, and spiritually. So we've got
Yeah.
mindfulness exercises, for example. We've got nudges. Of course, you've been wearing Fitbits, and we've got Apple Watches and so
Yeah.
forth, and
I
all the
love the
rest of
sleep
it.
side of that because
Yeah,
the watch gets annoying if you sleep with it all the time, I find.
totally, yeah.
But the information's so important. And I had an app, and I don't know how it does it. It's on my phone, so it must be just assuming I'm asleep when it's not in use for so long. But it
Yeah.
says, you've got this sleep deprive, and you need to go to bed at this time to make up for it. I was like, oh wow, that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, it goes very detailed into the types of sleep, right? Your awake stage, your REM
Mm.
sleep, your deep sleep, for example. And sleep is a very critical
It is.
facet for creativity, even for looking at your brain stimulation and really bringing in the right levels of, aspects to be a lot more active during the day.
Oh,
So
brain function, memory, learning.
everything,
Like I keep telling
exactly.
my kids, you won't learn
Yeah.
what you've learned today if you don't go to sleep.
Correct. So important. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, it's been so
So
wonderful
there's a
to
lot of
learn
tech
all
out
these
there, but
things.
it's about how does it nudge you? How does it enable you to, trigger you to do the right things? And
Well, you got to use the information, and I think
yeah,
they really are taking on the information that we can use this tech for, and
totally.
making their lives better because of it.
Correct, exactly. And that's kind of what we
The purpose.
amplify through Wise Mirror, saying how do we bring all these things, which was science fiction yesterday, is reality today, and how do we bring that, bridge that gap much faster through a lot of those exponential technologies, and say how can it be used like artificial intelligence? We've seen so many different, and we've what I really don't like calling it artificial, it's augmented intelligence. It's augmenting human intelligence. So
True.
as we've seen today, Chat GPT and GPT-3, 4, the evolution of that is so rapid. We saw it coming. I mean, we've seen the move to the artificial general intelligence that we call, and something that we've been coining around awakened intelligence, which is really a lot more holistic, where conscious leadership and the all these different aspects sort of come in a lot more deeper, working into that heart set level that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah. And so if someone's listening to this and they've been thinking about their leadership role and their career and how important leadership might and what place it plays in their life, what would you say to them? What could be the first steps for them to start thinking about?
Well, I think it's about how do we become a lot more mindful with the activities we want to do, with in terms of just nudging ourselves with learning from our past, committing the right sort of things for the future, and looking at how do we become a lot more humane in that level, being a lot more conscious. And I think how do we be a lot more open and collaborative with people around us, being able to take in. And I think this is where we talk about something called the serendipity mindset. So I'll just give you a quick background of that. I, by chance, was sitting at a table at the World Economic Forum at a dinner, and the person behind me, we just happened to have a conversation, and then I found out Professor Christian Bush, he wrote this amazing book called The Serendipity Mindset. And of course, we'd seen the movie called The Secret. We know about intuitive powers and so forth, but he actually had formalized and written this book. And I was one of the first to help proofread it with him. We became great friends. And it was serendipity that we sort of came together. And then he wrote the next version of that book, Connecting the Dots. And I feel so much of that is, and I've written an article around all this and stuff, and said it's so much of my own life. And I look back and connect those dots and see how one thing led to another, how my own career of moving from Australia and living in, working in over 20 countries over a span of 2 decades sort of led me to where I am, and the learnings, the broadening of my horizon with the travels that I could do and learning. And I think that that's what sort of led to that conscious movement, having the right environment, having the right connections, and bringing that equilibrium. And that's what I tell people about, having that very positive sort of people you surround yourself with. In Wise Mirror, we talk about Wetopia, from utopia to the Wetopia. So it's all about that collaborative, innovation that we can develop with the right sort of mindset around this.
And I'm seeing it completely being, integrated, especially for younger businesses, and then older ones are trying to work out ways to implement it into their teams and their staff. So I really can see that it is a movement that's going towards what we can most benefit from. And it's from, having less stress and understanding ourselves, and how do we bring it into a community feel. And for me, that's just what I think leadership is. That's my definition. So it'd be great to see more people recognize that and get involved and understand you're here because you're meant to be. Everything that's happened has happened for a reason, for you to learn what you needed to learn to be here today. That's and so what can you now take to grow from that and become, or be doing what you want to be doing?
Totally. No, exactly.
I love the saying where it says, you are who you are. The strengths that you have is what you have. And that's to help you with your purpose. So finding your purpose is really important.
Yeah, totally. And I think, as the great Buddha also says, what you think you become. So it's having the right thoughts, having the right environment, the right people you surround yourself with, and amplifying that to the right level of what is it that you're trying to achieve, your deep passion and purpose colliding to bring out the best in you. And it's all there. It's about taking the right steps, having that lifelong learning of timeless life skills, and imbibing all of that as you sort of take that journey on your own personal growth. And that's what will make that true leader shine out within you.
Yeah. And then, the roll-on effect, you take those skills home, you take it to your children, you take it to your personal life, and then everyone benefits.
Totally. And I think that's what the world needs today, is very much, as we've seen with the wake up that we've had with COVID, the big shift, the reset, or
the big reset, I like it.
as we talk about, it's how do we bring that deep empathy, that compassion, and amplify it with the curiosity, and apply frugal thinking, and how do we democratize the applications of technology. And I think that was my learning, moving from the West to the East when I've lived and worked in India and Africa, of learning how do we work for the base of the pyramid and sort of change things by technology, and working with things like a computer, one laptop per child, and then taking learnings from that to create the Akash tablet for learning was a big learning that I had, I would say, in my own career, of working with a great bunch of people to see how do we change the life of 100 million plus people in India at that time, for students who were really...
Well, that's global, right? Like 100 million people is just that roll-on effect. We might affect 100 people in one country, but if you can do 100 million people in another country, then that's just going to grow exponentially.
Yeah. And I think that's the learnings that one sees, that, when you make some things very affordable, accessible, and to that level of integration of technology, create that delight. And I think it was the learnings I had from the early product design work I did with, even for contributing to the first Apple for iPhone, and saying, how do we bring that and harness it to a much more frugal level, something we call jugaad innovation or reverse innovation, and bring it to that base of that pyramid. and you could really create a game-changing approach there for so many other products to come. And that's what
Yeah.
I've seen and enjoyed working on and learned so much from others who are doing it. Yeah.
Oh, it's fascinating. It's really, it just gets you to think that next level. You know, most people think about this and not this. And that's really what it is. You know, what would change? We don't even know. Like, there's so much out there that's going to come from, you know, inspiring that many people. Oh, well, thanks, Anuraj, for joining me today. I really hope you've enjoyed your time here. And I recognize that we could probably talk for hours.
Yes, we could. I know.
Because there's so many other things I want to talk about. But I think this was really insightful, and I'd love for people to think about, you know, how are you using your strengths? What can you do to calm yourself and become innovative? Because that's what leaders do. So thank you for sharing your insights and knowledge with us. But please don't forget to subscribe. And now it's your turn to leave a comment and join this conversation, because if this is one conversation you're going to join this year, this is the one. And if you have a topic you want to discuss and add value to our leadership podcast, then please reach out on the link in the description. But if you want to identify the gaps that you have in your leadership, then there's a link in there for a free personalized game plan to get you started. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks for joining us today.